Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host today. And this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. If you're not a member, please go over there and join and show your support for the work that we do. The topic for today is historical. Last week, The Chocolate Life celebrated its 17th anniversary. So yeah, from 2008 to 2025. And you can see on the homepage right now, it says the Chocolate Life celebrated its 17th anniversary on January 16th. It didn't occur to me when I was setting up the topic for last Friday's episode, which was with Thomas Forbes about cocoa and chocolate in the Dominican Republic, that it was the day after the actual anniversary. So I wanted to catch up with that today. And as a quick reminder, you can go into the comments, the live chat replay on YouTube or the comments on LinkedIn or Facebook, and you can let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Excuse me. Or you can also ask me a question or comment on anything that I have to say. This is the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. And for every single post on or every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post about the episode. And the links to the episode are here in case for any reason what you're doing is you're not watching live, you're not watching and just listening, or you're listening to an audio podcast. And I've just, clicked the link to show the audio podcast dashboard. There are 80 some odd episodes which have been uploaded so that you can listen to right away. But the idea is that you don't have to pay close attention and catch the links during the episode. I'm not putting them in the show notes on YouTube because I'm not assuming that everybody is watching on YouTube. You can go to this page on The Chocolate Life, and that you can learn more about today's episode and follow along. So here is the post for today's episode about The Chocolate Life 2008 to 2025. And I want to start off, if I can, with a little bit of history, because for people who are regular visitors here, they know that my talking through things is an important part of my process of evaluating things, and just as writing is, right? So there are different ways for me to sort of process what it is that I'm going through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to a post which is about The Chocolate Life, which contains most of the links for today's episode. So when you get here, go to About The Chocolate Life and click through. All right. So I was inspired to get into the chocolate business in 1994. After I discovered for myself single origin chocolate, so Bonnat chocolate in 1994 in the south of France. And I decided at one point that, there were no professional critics for chocolate, so I'm going to become the world's professional chocolate critic. And this is a journey that took me 7 years. So over the course of 7 years, I figured out what it meant to be a professional chocolate critic. And I first hung out my shingle on the internet in late May, early June of 2001. And here you're seeing the homepage of chocophile.com for updated on Friday, June 1st. So this is when it went live. It's one of the first crawls of the chocophile.com in the archive.org Wayback Machine. So you can go there, you can see this. I actually link to it, so in the notes. But this was a hand-coded website using a bit of software called Userland Frontier. There were no content management systems as we think of them today. So this is 2001. Maybe there's GeoCities, but maybe there was MySpace. I don't recall. But these were not, these were not appropriate platforms for what it is that I wanted to do. It didn't provide me with the control over the presentation of content. So here we are. This is what chocophile.com looked like in the first week of its existence in 2001, right? And what you have is a straightforward blog site without any comments, without any sort of user interaction. This is just me writing about what I thought was interesting and what I thought was important, right? If people wanted to reach out to me, what they could do is they could send me an email, and I would respond by email or on the website, right? But excuse me, there was no sort of comment management system at the time that I thought would provide the sort of um, level of control. I mean, there may not have been a third-party comment management system at all at that point, but this is what the Chocophile looked like, right? It's very, very straightforward, very grid-oriented, not a whole lot of frills and not a whole lot of design, right? So around the time that I was getting ready to publish, or around the time that Discover Chocolate was about to be published, so we're talking about I had contributed the manuscript, my final version of the manuscript. It had gone to final layout. So we're talking about the first 6 months of 2007. I was thinking to myself, maybe what I want to do is I want to change the design of Discover Chocolate, change the side, change the design of chocophile.com, and change the name to reflect the name of the book. And so for a very short period of time, chocophile.com disappeared, and the content of chocophile.com showed up in this view. So this is what, for just a couple of months, um, um, what I was doing looked like. It has the same disadvantages of chocophile.com. There's a content management system here, I believe. I don't remember if I was hand coding this. I don't think so, given the way the tabs are structured up at the top of this. This is a screenshot, by the way. I do provide a link down in the bottom if you want to go look at it. But still, there's no comments. So these are just posts. If people want to contact me, they can email me, they can send me questions. Right? But as a part of this whole process, and I think this is important, and I think it's important for other people in other businesses, is I realized that between 2001, when I started chocophile.com, and 2007, when I put up Discover Chocolate, that the world of chocolate had changed, and because of something we can think of as the rise of the citizen blogger. So we have Blogspot is showing up. We have um, MySpace is huge. Facebook has become a thing, and so I needed to ask myself, what is it that I'm doing? What do I have? What resources do I have? What can I do that other people are not doing? So I've been doing this now for close to a decade. In terms of, when I had my first job, it's 8 years. I've got a book published. What is it that I can do that's different from what other people are doing? And this is something I think that everybody who's in business for themselves should sit down and do on a regular basis. I try to do it once a year. This is an episode where I sit and think about these things like this. And so so one of the things that got me to thinking about moving from a traditional blogging platform into something that had a community component, where the interaction of comments was built in, right? Where other people who joined the community could post themselves, became an important part of this. This is something that came up this morning in the r/chocolate subreddit, um, which is, here's a picture of a piece of chocolate, and the person is asking, where does this chocolate come from? Can you identify it? Now, it's a bad picture. All we know about it is, please tell us, can you identify it? Can you tell me what it is? And way back in 2005, 2006, 2007, I would regularly get these kinds of requests from people who they just emailed them to me at either chocophile.com or at discoverchocolate.com. And I remember one very, very specifically is somebody sent me a picture of a little giondiotti. So it's a little triangular piece of chocolate. It is wrapped in a green and gold foil wrapper. It has some writing on it. I couldn't tell from the picture. And somebody was saying, I was in Italy a decade ago. I ran across these. Does anybody know what they are? Do I know what they are? And at that point, this person, is not interested in paying me for my time. So I was asking myself, is there a way that I can ask these questions? And this is, obviously, a decade or so before Reddit comes onto the scene. And the answer is yeah, right? If I have a member of a community who lives in Italy, we can publish this picture and publish this request, and somebody in Italy who knows the answer to the question can provide the answer. And that may sound like really old news today. I mean, there's nothing unusual about that today. But what is this, 18 years ago now, 17, 18 years ago now, that was quite a remarkable ask. I mean, Facebook at the time had just moved from literally you had to be a college student in order to sign up for account to be open to the general public. It had been a while for that, and MySpace is on the horizon, but it's not suitable for this. And so I was looking to see on Facebook, I joined, right? And I was looking to see, even though there might have been, 300,000 members at the time, whatever number of members there were, how could I go about and identify the 10,000 or 12,000 members, assuming there were that many members of Facebook in late 2007, who might be interested in chocolate seriously? I mean, there was a chocolate group, but 90% of the posts were things like, Twix rule or Kit Kat's rule or things like that. They weren't serious discussions of chocolate. And, coming on the heels of my book, I wanted to have serious discussions of chocolate. And so what I decided to do was look to say, is there a white label version of Facebook? Is there software that provides the capabilities of Facebook, right? Where I can, where the vast majority of the members, all of the members, as a matter of fact, are interested in chocolate. They're not people who are members of this larger community of Facebook, right, who might be interested in chocolate. Because as I say, I had no way to identify who those people were. There were no good searching capabilities. Advertising and targeted advertising didn't really exist as a thing. It may not have existed at all, let alone a thing. And so I'm faced with, how do I go about doing this? How do I go about creating a community? And what I ended up doing was, so how do I go about creating a community where I could crowdsource the answers to questions I didn't know? That was, what I was struggling with. And what I ended up deciding on was a software platform, called Ning. And Ning was the first company that I was aware of which offered the ability, all of the capabilities of Facebook, right? Which I could brand my own way. So it didn't say, maybe it said Ning somewhere in the footer, but otherwise what I could do is I could make my site look exactly the way I wanted to. And so this is what I did over the holidays. So over December into January of 2007 into January of 2008. And for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why. Actually, in thinking, having said that, I now know why. What I said was the Chocolate Life. The name The Chocolate Life to me talked about community. It talked about living a life in which chocolate was a part of what we're doing. Very different from Discover Chocolate, right? Very, very different. It had different connotations. And at that point, if people don't know the story, I first identified the phrase La Vida Coco. So La Vida Coco, from the Ricky Martin song "Living La Vida Loca" became "Living La Vida Coco," became "Living the Chocolate Life." And you can see that I have The Chocolate Life and Discover Chocolate and Live La Vida Coco. I'm sort of mushing all that branding together, trying to make the connections. You can see that there's a cover. I had purchased like 1,000 copies of Discover Chocolate myself, and I was selling them directly. You can see that I'm working to create an environment where people were free to join, and they're free to join, as in there was no way for me to charge subscriptions. That's not something that Ning supported at the time. Patreon, I don't think, exists at this time. So this was a screenshot from June of 2009. The Wayback Machine, the archives prior to this date, are pretty inconsistent in terms of the way they represent the pages. And so I went to here because it was a good representation of the page, of what it looked like. And I had, this was where, from early 2008 into early 2015, so a course of 7 years or so, Ning was the platform for the Chocolate Life. And over the course of this, they probably signed up about somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 members in over 120 countries. And people could upload blog posts, they could upload images, they could ask questions, we could share videos, right? This is the core of what the Chocolate Life community started out to be. Right? So you can go and take a look. It's pretty primitive, but there was a members directory, there were forums for asking questions, blogs, videos, events, groups, shop. I mean, all kinds of things were available there, right? And so this is where the most important thing that I learned was about how to moderate community, right? So you have a whole wealth of personalities, some of whom are very passive, some of whom are aggressive, and so understanding how to moderate community online was where I went with the Chocolate Life on Ning. And then in late 2014, so here's one of the original looks of the header. It became a little more complicated here. This graphic looks the way it is because of a particular piece of software that was available on the Macintosh called Quartz, Quartz, which allowed me to do these things very, very easily. And so I used it to do a lot of the graphics for the Chocolate Life. But in the fall of 2014, so not quite 7 years after I spun up the Chocolate Life on Ning, Ning announced that they were going from one version to another version. And in the process of doing this upgrade, they were going to be deprecating some features that I thought were key to what the Chocolate Life community was all about. And so what I needed to do was I needed to figure out a replacement for Ning. And I didn't want to just replace the functionality of Ning. What I wanted to do was I wanted to be able to import as much of the content from the Ning website to the new version, whatever the software platform was going to be, as possible, right? And so I began a search which lasted a couple of months, right? And found a bit of software from a company called Jamroom. And it's called Jamroom because it was set up to handle communities of music. So I might be a record label and I would have a number of bands that I represented, or I might be a manager and would have a number of bands, or I might be a musician and be in a bunch of bands, or I might be a band and want to promote albums and downloadable files and concerts and things like that. And one of the things that attracted me about what Jamroom was doing is that they were the first people to announce a Ning importer. And so providentially, the Ning people, and going from one version to another version, had said, listen, if you want to export all your data out of Ning, there is a Ning exporter, right? And it created a series of JSON files, badly as it turned out, which was a real issue because there's a lot of content got lost and a lot of links got broken because the JSON exporter didn't work very well because, of course, the people at Ning didn't want to lose people. So I'm sitting here and I'm going, okay, I've got roughly 4 months. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to export as much of the content as I could from Ning, right, into Jamroom in a hosted server environment. And the first versions of the Chocolate Life, right, on Jamroom looked like this. I mean, it's not very pretty. Jamroom as a bit of software doesn't have as much flexibility in terms of theming as many other platforms do. And so this is what one of the earliest screenshots from the Wayback Machine looks like. You can go to the Wayback Machine and go take a look at this yourself. I believe there's a link to this page. Nope, that's just a screenshot. But you can go and select the date. So you can go to the Wayback Machine, go to thechocolatelife.com, look for June 2, 2015. So this is about 3 months, 2 months, 3 months after I made this swap from Ning to Tamra. I'm just learning how to use the tool, and eventually, I'm making a little more interesting um, um, cover graphics. I mean, this cover graphic has to be from after 2014. I know this because I took this picture in Nicaragua in 2015, maybe. So, it's contemporaneous with what's going on. But I was, had this a little bit more graphical feel, right? And most importantly is I still had all the forums content, all the interactive capability that was a part of the Ning platform. But towards the end of this period, so sometime starting late 2016, early 2017, I'm noticing just this huge rise in spam, right? And there are a lot of people signing up who have no intention of being part of the community and are posting stuff that is just, oh, I see that you have good SEO in Google. If I put a link in deeply nested in a comment, then what I can do is I can take advantage of the SEO ranking that the Chocolate Life has, because keep in mind at that point, I've been doing this for 7 years, 9 years, a long time, right? And so I was actually spending a huge part of my time administering spam, right? And trying to figure out, it's taking a lot more of my time. How am I going to go about how can I go about affording to spend all this time managing the spam, right? And integrating a shopping experience into this was a real challenge. So I'm struggling on a lot of different ways, right? And so around June of 2017, actually this is March of 2017, I was approached by this startup called the Maven. And what the Maven was doing is it was setting up a publishing platform, so a shared hosting platform, kind of like Facebook is. All the underlying hosting resources would be um, in this single platform, professionally managed. And what I would be able to do is host a brand. So I could have the Chocolate Life on the Maven network. And the URL looks like, if I can sum it up, Food Maven, because we had different Mavens: Car Maven, Food Maven, Sports Maven, right? So Food Maven, the Chocolate Life, right? And here is a page called Ask the Chocolate Life, right? So I was able to do some branding of my own, have this support program. And what I was going to be is I was going to be part of a larger network of hundreds of sites. And what we would do is they would sell advertising and I would get a portion of the advertising sales. Right? And I'm thinking, let's figure out what it works. And I didn't have to pay anything every month. I didn't have to pay anything for the Maven platform. So I was, and they were going to pay me. And so it turns out that this is something that lasted about 2 years, right? But the trade-off that I made was, again, there was a comment system. So new members or any member could post a comment to any post that was there, but members could not easily contribute new content. So they couldn't post themselves, right? They couldn't, there were very, very strict limitations on what they could do. And in the end, it turned out to be a bad business decision for me because they did not hold up their end of the bargain. The Maven people didn't hold up their end of the bargain in terms of providing a software platform, an editorial platform, and related platforms, which would enable me to grow my business. I was just way too dependent on their sales team and other kinds of things. And so I'm really, really struggling. And then in the summer of 2019, they came to me and said, "Hey, Clay, thank you, but we don't want you anymore. The Chocolate Life is just too small. what we're doing is we're changing the direction where we're going. We know we're going to offer you, stock options for being an early adopter and all sorts of stuff. But we're changing all this, and not only are we changing all these things, but you're no longer welcome on our network. We're not going to kick you off. We're going to keep you on until you can find a replacement for um, for Maven. And so, okay, I all right, that kind of makes sense, I suppose. But now I'm in. Now I need to figure out is like, how do I take all? So I wasn't able to take any of the content from the old Jamroom platform and import it into the Maven platform, even though they hinted that that was something that they would do. I didn't leave until they created an export program, so so I could actually get the data out of Maven, and actually had to do it through WordPress. I had to export out of Maven into WordPress and then massage the WordPress files and import them into another tool. So what I did when I moved to the Maven is I took the old Chocolate Life site on Jamroom and I just turned off the ability for new people to join. And then I ended up turning off the ability for people to add new content, because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to administer two different communities at the same time. And I didn't have to worry about logins and all this kind of stuff. It just made no sense. And so the Chocolate Life archive contains all of the content from 2008 to 2017, right? And then the current site, which is the Ghost site, which is this site here, contains a small percentage of the content from Maven and a small percentage of the content from the Jamroom site, because of the nature of the import process. Now, overall, there are about 15, almost 1,600 individual posts, which exists on the Chocolate Life website so far. And the archive site has got many, many thousands more. There are different platforms serving different purposes, right? As I'm sure you all know. But this is sort of the history of where it is. I'm trying to say, well, so I'm a sole proprietor. I'm doing this on my own, right? And I'm trying to figure out how to stay relevant. I'm trying to say, how do I have something? I think you'll agree that this presentation is more interesting than this presentation. I think that this presentation is easier to navigate. I have much better search capabilities than I did. And so there's a lot to like about this new platform, which is called Ghost. And I made the decision to go with Ghost as a platform from Jamroom or from the Maven, because I found a developer, right, who had created a theme. So the developer is named Salahin. He's got a company based in the UK and in Bangladesh called Anorium. He specializes in Ghost. He develops themes and he manages the website. So I pay a flat monthly fee for the hosting and backup and all of the updates. So theme updates, CSS updates, all the things that I need in order to keep the Chocolate Life running. So I pay a flat monthly fee to do that. And I've got a platform here. Now, one of the reasons why I chose Ghost at this time, there was one specific reason. Now, I had looked at Ghost back in 2015 when I was looking to move from Ning into someplace else. I was looking to move off Ning into something else. And in 2015, two problems. Number one is there was no good content importer. So no way for me to take the export out of Maven and put it into Ghost, or export out of Ning and put it into Ghost, number one. So there's no way to do that. There was no comment system. So I'm going to a straight blog platform. I mean, no comment system whatsoever. No native comment system. And then other, other things, which meant it made no business sense for me to do this. But when I looked at this again back in 2019, It turned out that while there was no native comment system for Ghost at the time, there was a third-party content system as a plugin. And so it meant paying a little bit more every month for the comments, but I had comments. Yay. There was now an official importer. I could take a WordPress file, in the right order, and I could import all of the contents from WordPress into Ghost. So I could export out of the Maven and put it into here. More importantly, they had just launched a membership system. And so one of the challenges with the Chocolate Life from the very beginning, not one of the challenges, okay, one of the features is there was always a free membership. There's always been a free membership of the Chocolate Life. There is still a free membership of the Chocolate Life. It's been that way for 17 years now. You can join for free. I'll send you monthly newsletters, not too much. But now what I can do is I can charge at different levels, and I can charge by the month, and I can charge by the year, and I can offer different perk levels and other sorts of stuff. And so this is one of the things that I wanted to do when I moved off of Maven. I wanted to have a membership system where people could directly support the work that I was doing. They didn't, I didn't want to use Patreon. I didn't want to do sort of like network advertising. I mean, what's really important for me is that Ghost sets almost no cookies. I mean, other than to manage state, right? So, there are no advertising cookies. There are no tracking cookies. There's nothing like that that's identifying you as a visitor to the Chocolate Life in a way that opens up any kind of personally identifying information. I'm just setting a session cookie so that I can keep track of where you are. The site can keep track of where you are. Now, you'll notice that, oh, hey, what's this advertisement doing here? Right? This advertisement is served by an ad server that I manage. I run and I manage this ad server. It's a hosted ad server. I pay a certain amount per month for a certain number of impressions, and I'm paying for this. And I only serve naked URLs. So people have to send me the direct URL of the website, and I'm not accepting anything that is served by a third-party ad server. I'm not accepting anything that goes through a URL shortener like Bitly for shortener/forwarder, because somebody somewhere else can change the destination on me at any time. And so there's no cookie setting, there's no ad server which is tracking you all around the internet as you're doing this. I really want to be careful about doing all of those things here on the Chocolate Life. And so the challenge for me has been, number one, sitting down on a regular basis and just doing this, SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This, like, okay, how has the universe changed? Where are there other people who are doing what it is that I'm doing? What are they doing? How can I do what it is that I'm doing better? That's the so it's really focused on that. So one of the things that I've been looking at is something called single sign-on. And I've been looking at this for the better part of a year. And what I want with a single sign-on is, right now, I'm not logged in, right? So it says join. I'm not logged into the site because I wanted to show you the sign-up form. So I'm not logged into the site. What I wanted to do is say, if you were logged into the site, right, and you went and visited the archive site, that you would be automatically logged in, right? And it turns out that there is no easy way to do this. Jamroom has some capabilities through a third-party service called OnePass, but Ghost has no built-in support for what's called single sign-on. And there's no native support for anything which does this. And it turned out that it's non-trivial, and it turned out to be much more engineering effort than it was worth in the long run. And so what I've been doing is I've been saying to myself, I think it's really important to be able to reintroduce the kind of community which is associated with the forum section. So here is the forums. There have been very few new posts since 2017. There have been some. But how can I reinvigorate the forum section, particularly, so that people are not dependent upon me, right, to post anything. It's like, oh, it's really, really important. It's the thing on how can people go and upload image libraries for what they're doing? We've got images. People will be able to go post videos. People can do blog posts, right? All these kinds of things. I don't know particularly why there's a blog post here that's doing a for sale thing. Normally, there's a for sale in the classifieds. So there are a lot of things which are here. Ooh, did that classifieds work? The link is broken. Anyway, I got to fix things, right? But one of the things I've been looking at is what I want to do is I want to make it possible for people to um, I want to reopen the archive site and make it active. And I've been trying to figure out the best way that I can do it with the least amount of labor. And it turns out it's not possible, right? There's going to be some manual labor involved. And it turns out that I'm now, again, working with beta test software. So I have to export all of the members out of Ghost. I need to figure out, there are some people who I know don't want to be members of the Chocolate Life archive site. Um, and then create accounts for all of them. And I need to do that on a regular basis, like once a month. I'm going to need to do this export import process. So man, it's like there's a work to do, but it is something that requires support from the people who manage the software for Jamroot. Because we're looking at beta level software and they're not entirely sure how it's all going to work. So I'm going in short baby steps and because I don't want to ruin this. But it will require that there be two separate sign-ons. So you'll need a sign-on for the Chocolate Life. And then I'm still going to leave it at archive.thechocolatelife.com because for SEO purposes, about half the traffic goes to the archive site right now. So I want to keep it there, but I am going to change this rather than the Chocolate Archive. I'm going to be calling it the forums. If I can figure out a way to keep the SEO and not require tens of hours worth of work, because it's going to require configuration of a lot of things, I think, in order to be able to make the change. But very, very shortly, I hope within the next month or so, right, that what's going to happen is that you can go to there'll be new branding, so it won't say the Chocolate Life Archive anymore. It'll say the Chocolate Life Forums or the Chocolate Life Community. I'm not entirely sure. If you have an idea about which you'd prefer, do you think the Chocolate Life Community is the best way to go about doing it? I will go and I'm open for those suggestions, and then I'm going to reopen all of the forums. I'm gonna some of them are going to be historic and are going to be read only, but there will be the ability to post low value classifieds. So anything under $1,000, the classifieds you post, you manage, you'd be able to do that. All these questions that you want to do, and then be able to have access to all of the historical data that's there. So it's everything from 2008 to roughly 2017, and then everything going forward. And then there will be the separate website, which is the Chocolate Life, which will be primarily a blogging site. So this is where I am talking about the things that are important to me. But it's also important to know that there is now a native commenting system. I believe there are no comments. Oh, yes, there are comments on this page. It looks differently because I'm not signed in. So there's now a native commenting system here. So if you are a member of the Chocolate Life, you can comment on any post. I get emailed when there's any comment. And so I'm notified when there's something here. And this is a new feature, best, newest, and oldest, which is a new feature which is added to an upgrade, which was installed this past weekend, comment sorting. So you can go and sort through the comments. Constantly updating this and trying to make it more useful to everyone that's here. And so that is what it is that I'm looking for when I say, okay, Um, well, this is interesting. So I now have to go from the about page, right, to the page which is for the post. And I need to make it a little more obvious that what's going on. I need to say, you need to read this. You can read this for an intro to the live stream discussion. I think I need to change that, right? So what's going on? So um, I'm going to go back to the beginning. So it's 2008 or thereabouts, late 2007, early 2008. And where is my head with all of these things? So people may not know, you may not know, that before I got involved in the world of chocolate, I had spent close to 20 years in the world of high technology. So I worked for my first job out of college that wasn't in the photography world. So I have a BFA in photography from Rhode Island School of Design. I first started working in New York City as a first assistant and darkroom assistant for architectural and studio photographers. That's what I did when I moved to New York City because, hey, I graduated from art school. What am I going to do? What am I going to do after art school? I'm going to go to New York City and I'm going to become a photographer. But I was introduced through an alumni connection to a startup computer graphics company in New Jersey in like August, September of 1983. And very shortly after that, after a couple of introductions, I went to work for them full time. So my first high tech startup, which I define sort of jokingly as when your stock options never go above water, was I joined in late 1983, and I spent a little over 4 years with them. But then I spent the next 14 years working for in computer graphics, in interactive multimedia, in high definition television production, in internet development, in information management technology. I'm the name inventor on a couple of patents in that area. One of those patents was successfully litigated against Microsoft. I've done some very, very interesting things. And a lot of what it is that I do around the chocolate life is rooted in those experiences and that history. But small world, I went to TED 2, right, which was in Monterey, like 1989, 1990, something thereabouts. I do remember that Herbie Hancock was the featured performer. I had colleagues from Apple who were there that I had done work with, but I met for the first time at TED 2 a gentleman by the name of Louis Rossetto and his partner, Jane Metcalf. And Louis and Jane went on to become the founders of Wired magazine. They were in Amsterdam at the time. They had been publishing something called Electric Word, right? But they came to me and a colleague of mine when I was working for the high definition television production company. They were shopping around Wired magazine, right? And they wanted to do an HDTV version of Wired magazine. And so this is somewhere between 1993 and 1995. So 5-6 years later, after I met them at TED 2. And then in 2007, in December of 2007, I was reintroduced to them because they were among the first investors in a little chocolate company called TCHO. So what are the co-founders of Wired magazine doing in a chocolate company? I don't know the answer to that question. And I brought it up because this was one of the first stories for me that I wrote about on the chocolate life, right? Having to do with what I thought Cho was doing well and what they were not doing well. I mean, I think the way they used the internet and social media was brilliant at the time. They were doing some things which were taking, so 2007, right? This is early days of craft chocolate, right? So um, you know, so they were doing things that were new and different and interesting, and they were, and it was the people at Wired, I mean, who had, changed our notion of what a technology magazine should be. Now, just if anybody really wants to know, if you can find a copy of Volume 1, Number 1 of Wired magazine and look at the back cover, that's for a company that I co-founded with a guy by the name of Ron Martinez. Ron was the founder of something called Trans Fiction Systems, so text-based games. He went on and to do great things in other areas of gaming on the internet. But we created the idea for a company around what we called post-linear media. But if you go take a look at the back cover of Wired magazine, volume 1, number 1, that ad is one for my company. Just little tiny. Weird the way things connect in this world. Anyway, so I do want to jump, and I do want to quick. From North Queensland Chocolate, hey, shout out from Oz. Hey, by the way, I want to let you know that there is this South Australia. I have family members who are from Australia, and over the weekend, what we do is we take a look at a trivia contest, which is in the South Australia weekend edition of the Advertiser magazine. And so, just want to, if you do this, let me know. It's a fun way to spend part of a weekend with family members, and a connection to Oz. I've visited a couple times, but it's such a difficult path. Well done. Thank you for giving up. I gave up on the computer side of stuff. It got too difficult to me. Yeah, it's interesting you should mention that. So my background in high technology is definitely in computing. My father was involved in the computer industry beginning in the 1950s. I mean, before I was born. I grew up right around computing and computer magazines. We had a teletype terminal in my living room, right? So right off the dining room. I believe in like 1996. No, 1976. 1968. So I'm trying to think about where I lived when. So in the late 1960s, we had a teletype terminal connected by 300 baud acoustic coupled modem, right, to the mainframe at the University of California at Irvine, right? Because we were living in Southern California at the time. So I mean, it's like I had a computer in my home. Well, I had a computer terminal in my home in the 1960s. So I grew up around this stuff. So the technology doesn't scare me. And I'm used to thinking about it in particular kinds of ways. And so there's a lot about not just the computer technology that I'm using right now that I understand, and I may understand it at some levels better than someone who's much younger than I am. However, sitting on top of social media and TikTok and everything that needs to get done to quote unquote go viral, I'm not going to pretend. It's not that I don't understand it. It's just that that's not how I want to spend my time. I prefer not to focus on what it needs, the discipline, right? In many respects of doing that kind of stuff in order to raise your, I'm just not interested in it. It doesn't interest me to do those kinds of things. I'm far more interested in the content side of things. And so, or maybe I'm just fooling myself and it is too difficult for me. And I'm just telling myself, hey, it doesn't interest me. It amounts in the end to the same thing. But there are a lot of things that I do that are related. I mean, if I look at the arc of my career, and I think it's, why not look at the arc of my career? People will go, hey, Clay, you started at art school. And while I was at art school, I took the first ever computer classes, which were offered at Rhode Island School of Design, but they were offered by students in the computer science department at Brown University. They came downhill. And RISD students go up to Brown students go down to RISD and take classes and things like that. But the computer science department at Brown at that time was run by a guy named Andy Van Dam. And Andy was the author in a book called Fundamentals of Interactive Computer Graphics. And the man who sponsored the class that I was in, his name is Mihai Nadine, semiotician, who's just a brilliant man and challenged me in many ways, and introduced me to things that I had never considered before. But he also took the entire class up to MIT, where we went to visit the Visible Language Workshop, which was founded by Muriel Cooper. The VLW was no longer there, but it morphed into what is now the Media Lab, with under Nick Negroponte. And so this is in 1983. I'm at MIT at the Visible Language Workshop, like with, at then cutting edge computer graphic systems, Apollo domain DN10000 systems, and systems which are programmed in PL1 and things like that. And I'm going, I can now connect my photography, right, the images that I'm making, to computers, right? Because when I was interested in computers when I was 8, my father would say, learn how to program in Fortran and COBOL, and I'm going, I do not want to. This makes no sense to me. It's not the way my brain works, right? And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, computers can make pictures, and they're not just dot matrix snoopies anymore. It's like, really, really interesting stuff. And then I had, the luxury, right, of going to SIGGRAPH, the Special Interest Group for Graphics, their annual conference, where we're looking at cutting edge, right, computer rendering systems, and I'm getting to meet the founders of Pixar, right, and the people who writing the code for the Pixar, image rendering machines. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, I'm just like immersed all this stuff, and I'm like in my early 20s, right? And so I'm really fortunate in many respects to have been able to do the things that I have done, right? But people say, well, you went from art school and then into computer graphics and then into chocolate, right? How does that make any sense whatsoever? How does it make any sense that this worked? And I see it, right, which is my career. A lot of my career has been about since I started working in computer graphics, so since 1983, was about taking complicated topics, right, breaking them down into simpler topics and coming up with explanations for them that I could communicate with other people. So when you're talking to people about, voxel rendering, or what the difference is between Phong and Gouraud shading, or why they should be able to do this and that. I mean, I worked on a system where we use outline fonts. I mean, kerning table, editable outline fonts with kerning tables, right? The same font data that Adobe started using when it started. I mean, like in the 1986, 1987. I mean, it's like I'm combining all these really, really difficult, complex topics, right? And then talking with artists and saying, well, this is how you've been doing things with wax and cutting things out and laying out, and now your horizons have changed, right? And how do you go about making that leap? How do you go about making that transition? And it turns out that chocolate has many of the same problems. It has a lot of complicated topics, like what is conching and how is conching different from refining, and let's look at roast profiles, and we have electronic equipment and electrical equipment. I mean, there are lots of similarities, right, in the communications problems. So I see that as the arc of my career, right? And it makes sense that I'm doing what it is that I'm doing now. I just started off in computer graphics, and now I'm taking the same skills and the same experience and applying it to chocolate. So I see it, right, working. So in case anybody, right, was wondering. But now I'm thinking about, okay, I hit my 17th anniversary. We got my 20th anniversary of The Chocolate Life. I celebrated the 20th anniversary of getting into chocolate in 2021. I've got the 17th anniversary of The Chocolate Life. I'm knowing I want to do this for at least another 3 years. I want to get to the 20th anniversary of The Chocolate Life. And what does the next 3 years look like? And that's where, sort of this notion goes. The next decade-ish. So it's going to be at least 3 years. It's going to be, if it's longer than that, I want to do this for as long as I'm physically and mentally capable of doing this. But one of the challenges that I have, which is something which shows in many kinds of businesses, is where do successors come from? There's this fabulous book. It's called Crafting the Culture and History, Crafting the Culture and History of French Chocolate, by Susan Theriault. If you haven't read the book, you should go read the book. I can put a link to it in today's post. It's an Amazon affiliate link. But one of the things that Ms. Theriault's, it was a graduate thesis was looking at is the issue of succession. If I have a small family-owned chocolate business in France and my kids don't want to take it over from me, how do I go about finding successors? This issue of succession, right, is something that has been not at the forefront of my thinking for many years, but it's been a part of my thinking for many, many years. My daughter, right, my biological daughter, I have three stepdaughters, but my biological daughter is not interested in getting into the chocolate business, right? And so I need to figure out what's going to happen with the chocolate life. And I need to figure it out in the next couple of years. Um, while I'm still capable of making the decisions. I need to find somebody who is interested in maintaining and growing the Chocolate Life platform, right? Taking it in new directions, right? And doing the thing, maybe doing things that I'm not interested in doing. So I was looking at engaging with a couple of younger people here in Prescott who were big in the social media marketing things. And I'm saying, hey, listen, guys, if you can grow the community and you're interested in chocolate, which they were. That's how we met through a common chocolate connection. Is this something that you eventually want to move into and take over? And that's a lot of the conversation that I'm going to start having over the next couple of years. I have a lot of intellectual assets and a lot of intangible assets in the form of SEO, the big community, a network of people that I have engaged with over the course of the last 20 some odd years. And part of the challenge that I face, and perhaps anybody who's watching this may know some people, is would you like to get involved over the course of the next couple of years to learn some of what it is that I know, to share with everybody what it is that you know, right? And to think about taking over the chocolate life, setting it up in a new business entity where all of the IP can be transferred into this new entity. I would have an equity stake. I'm just thinking about this because most of that IP is I have generated, right? And the goodwill and domain names and things like that I own. And that there's somebody who wants to go and maintain this. They could, uh, however, whatever that means. So I am open and I'm actively searching right now. And this, sort of open to the idea of accepting offers from people for quite some time, but now I'm more actively searching. How do I go take the chocolate life and ensure that there's someone who wants to take it on? Now, for as long as I'm alive and as long as I'm involved in it on a day-to-day basis, I want to, have editorial direction, if I put it that way. But I'm looking for somebody to put their stamp on it, right? To say, this is what it is that I want to do. I understand, Clay, here's the history. So part of this is so somebody knows how I got to where it is that I am right now. You can look at this and go, oh my gosh, I mean, it was, here's how we got to where we are from where we started out. I mean, which is, I think, is a really important story for many people to tell, because there aren't a whole lot of these stories that are being told. And while they may be told about specific chocolate companies, what do you know about the history of other websites about chocolate? What do you know about the history of a lot of the things about chocolate, which are part of your daily activity? And I don't think that there are a whole lot of them. And so that's what this is about today. So here's the history of the last 17 years of the chocolate life, and here's where it is that I want to go to talk about the next at least 3 to 5 years, if not the next decade. I want to find some person, some company, some group that is interested in saying, hey, we have an enormous resource here. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that that resource is maintained and is accessible to people. So if you know somebody, if you are one of those people, or you are that company, or you are that group, let me know. Right? If you know somebody who you think might be interested and has the time and the resources to get involved in this, let me know. Right? And we'll figure out a way to make The Chocolate Life last for the next 17 years, which I think would be very, very cool. I think that would be really, really cool indeed. And with that, it's time to sign off. I want to remind everybody, and it's been on the crawl throughout this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, is sponsored by the members. You can go to the Chocolate Life. Here it is right now. You can click on this green button where it says join, and you can become a member today to support what we're doing. We're not doing so I say we don't do advertising. We don't do network advertising. I only do advertising for festivals and classes and conferences in here. So just not doing advertising, not doing Patreon. All of the support that I get is from members who click on the join button and join at some level. Always love the free support. Yay, let's grow that membership level. But if you do have the resources to support me financially, no pressure. If you do have the resources and you're not sacrificing anything else, then I do appreciate going and making those contributions as well. If you're a business and you want to promote your business, give me a shout out. We can find ways, a bunch of different programs where we can talk about promoting your business. Right. Now, what I want to do very, very quickly before I sign off for today, because we're a little over the hours. Number one is this coming Friday, which is the 24th of January. The episode of Pod Save Chocolate is going to be an equipment question and answer session. Right. So I am working with a Turkish equipment manufacturer to help them represent their gear. So with all of the increases in prices in 2024 and the possibility of if you're in the United States, tariff increases, there's a need to be much more careful about your production processes. If you can't control the cost of your ingredients, then the one thing you can control is the cost of labor. And so I've been looking to find ways to reduce labor costs by providing new equipment, right? And lower cost equipment. And so I am working with a Turkish equipment manufacturer. I've worked with them in the past, successfully delivered an enrobing line for a complete custom 40 centimeter enrobing line, just like off the charts. But I'm now working with that same manufacturer. We're looking to develop a small coating pan, so a panning machine, which has got some really interesting features that we can talk about on Friday. But I'm interested in knowing what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a coating pan, what features are you looking for in a panning machine? If there is equipment that you think is needed by the industry, but is not available by the industry, what are your frustrations? Where does your existing continuous tempering machine fall short when it comes to roasting? Because we are working on an alternative to more traditional, more conventional Italian suppliers of continuous tempering machines, and we're also looking at a fluid bed roaster for just dedicated for cocoa. So we're looking for assistance. What do you think works, right? What doesn't work? What would you like to see? And that's going to be this coming Friday's episode of Pod Safe Chocolate. Is we're going to be talking about your frustrations. What kind of questions do you want to ask? You can put them in the comments. I'll ask them. I'll start talking about what it is that we're doing and where we think we're going and the challenges we're trying to solve with these things. And you can let us know, oh, the roaster needs to be this big or it needs to be that big. The tempering machines need to be this big or that big. What don't you like with what you've got? All that kind of stuff is open for discussion this coming Friday. And then a week from today, I'm going to be joined by Tandy Peterson, who is the Chief Everything Officer at Embers Chocolate down in Phoenix, Arizona. I know Tandy through, number one, the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival, which was in Rushville, Indiana recently. And it's also, she has been an entrant in the Craft Chocolate Challenge. And so we're going to be doing an interview and tasting of her current work. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. These are like my favorite episodes, is doing these interviews and tasting. And so that's, this coming Friday here, or this coming Friday and a week from today, next Tuesday, here on Pod Safe Chocolate. And with that, I want to thank everybody for joining me today, and to end, as I always do, with letting you know, or just reminding you, not letting, reminding you, listen, if you're working with chocolate, right? And I've been working with chocolate now for 25 years, right? If you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, and I hope you can tell I am still having fun. But if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, I think you're doing it wrong. And until the next time, everybody, ciao.